Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Hill, and this podcast, as always, is about music, motivation, information, education, and just a tad bit of humor. I thank you for tuning in. I'm driving home, and it's kind of late at night, and I had a thought listening to one of my favorite entrepreneurs and motivators, Gary Vaynerchuk. If you haven't heard of him before, please Google him. Gary VEE. Very motivational person. And so I'm listening to his latest book, which is called Crushing It. Check that out, by the way, as well. On audible.com or anywhere else, Amazon and those other places where you can purchase physical books and audiobooks. And as he's talking about delivering, moving forward on your goals, actually seeing your way through, he got to the concept of perfection. And I thought about something. You don't have to be perfect in order to be productive. You do not have to be perfect in order to be productive. A lot of times what holds us back from our goals and dreams is feeling like what we do is not going to be executed perfectly. And I like what Gary said, because he said, I don't believe that for a minute. He said, what I actually believe it is that people are afraid of being judged by people whose opinions mean a lot to them. And the thing about that is, you could kind of look at that as cliche. It's like, of course, that's obvious. But it kind of resonated with me all over again, because it is absolutely true. A lot of times we don't move forward on things, not because of the fear of failure. That's what he was challenging. He said, I don't think it's the fear of failure. A lot of times we won't move forward on things because we're afraid of being judged. And not just being judged by anybody, judged by people whose opinions really do mean a lot to us. And even though we don't want them to mean as much as they do, we just kind of can't help it because of our relationship to them, or because the pedestal that we put them on, or, just the way that we look up to them or we honor them. And so I thought about the things that I've done over my life to this point, even prior to my music career. But I definitely think about many examples that have happened during the course of my music career where I didn't let perfection get in the way of progress. I didn't let perfection get in the way of being productive. And it's a very interesting thing, because I started thinking about the second CD that I released. And I kind of chuckled to myself because, I've said this on a few occasions where I've been like, man, the mix, of the CD, as far as the engineering, I was a young engineer, I was a novice. Musically, I was a young musician, I was a novice. I had some very strong areas, and then I had some underdeveloped areas, as does anybody. And but I think about the mindset that I had at that time, and I think about how I feel now. When I chuckle to myself, kind of saying that anybody who I sold that CD to, I kind of need to go back and pay them for listening to that CD. And it wasn't that bad. I promise you it wasn't. In fact, I have the CD up now, and it's still online. This is actually on my website. It's called Exaltation. It's when I was doing gospel music and gospel jazz at the time. I used to be a gospel jazz artist. I had about maybe 3 albums that I released, and this was the second album. It's called Exaltation. And I'm very proud of all the works that I've done, in every area of my music career, every genre. I'm so proud of the works. But the thing is, of course, just like anybody else, I look at how far I've come now, and I look at where I was then. But the thing for me is that, I strive to appreciate, myself and the mindset that I was in when I did certain things. And I also strive to do the same thing for others. And I think we all should strive to appreciate, to really appreciate ourselves, especially when we're giving it our best. And so, of course, I look at that project and other projects. Like, I could barely even stand to listen to the first 2 songs on that project. Now, I do have to confess and say that, if you guys do check out the project on my website, aaronhillsmusic.com, the first 2 songs I actually took off there. I mean, they were kind of unbearable for me. But I still appreciate where I was, because the truth of the matter is, when I think about that, let me see if I could do the math real quick. Let's see. I'm drawing in the air here. 36, and I released that in 2009. Wow, it was 9 years ago already. So when I think about that 27-year-old kid, who at the time was, I was crushing it. I was like Gary V's book, I was crushing it. And one thing I thought about as I was sitting here reminiscing on it is, I remember, getting all the way to the end of the project, and I'm doing, all the music, all the instruments, I'm producing it, I'm printing it, I'm doing the engineering and the mix and master, everything on it, right? So I remember getting to the end of the project, and I wanted to, I've always been a person who set deadlines. So I wanted to really meet my deadline. And I can't remember the date, but all I remember is me flying to the post office, going downtown here in Baltimore to the Fayette Street post office, because it's the only post office that stays open to 7 p.m. And the thing is, it would have been okay if I released the CD the next day, or if I mailed it off. I was taking it there to mail it off for duplication. And I was so pressed about my deadline and just really meeting that deadline that, I'm flying down there at like 6:30. And I'm listening to the CD because, I've done the mix on it and everything. And I remember I stopped myself maybe about 10 minutes before I got to the post office, because I wasn't as happy with the mix. I was like, I accepted where I was. And this is the point right here. I accepted where I was at that time. Totally accepted. That's why I grinded and I allowed it to come out. I didn't worry about people's judgment about me. I didn't worry about the fact that, I wasn't playing the best chords, and I didn't have the best sound, and I didn't program the drums the best, or I didn't mix the song the best, or I didn't have the best writing. I didn't allow that to slow me down. And I'm glad I didn't, because the amount of people that CD and every other project that I put out and every other thing that I've done, where one side of me was afraid because I wanted it to be perfect and not wanting to be judged, but the other side of me, I knew that releasing it, that being vulnerable, that being transparent, that allowing it to fly, that's the only way that you allow your beautiful visions to come out, and to allow yourself to go to the next level and to have the impact that you want. One thing I realized, and I was speaking to someone about this the other day, there's a quote that I read one time. Someone sent me an email, and you guys may have heard this quote before, I'm sure. But at the end of that email, it said, our greatest fear is something like not the fear of failure, but our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. And I thought about that, because it was kind of oxymoronic. You would think that our greatest fear would be being inadequate. I think that's what it's speaking about, being inadequate. And those who are that listen, if you know the quote line for line, feel free, drop a voicemail, let me know what it is. But yeah, so our biggest fear is not that we're inadequate. And you would think that would be the biggest fear, inadequacy. But is that we're powerful beyond measure. And that struck me, because I was like, how could that be? But I knew it made sense. And so I just, dwelled on it for a while and really pondered on it. And I realized that it is very true. There's a lot of times that we're afraid of the judgment. We're afraid of opinions. And we're also afraid that what we want might actually happen. And that might sound so crazy, but I know there's somebody out there that feels me. that's listening to this, because it's a very interesting psychological thing. We're actually afraid a lot of times that what we want will actually happen. And it's because we know that it takes things to another level for us. Of course, we know there's very real responsibilities that will come with. But I think that one of the other really in-depth things about it is that it's a part of us. It's a vulnerable part of us where people get to really see the authentic us on another level, and that can be scary. And so that takes me back to the original point of this podcast, which is you don't have to be perfect in order to be productive. Accept yourself right where you are right now. Accept your skill level. Accept your knowledge level. Yes, you are a student of life. Yes, you will continue to learn and get better. But don't hold back. Don't die with the music in you. Don't hold back the gift that you actually have for others because of the fact that it's not in that perfect form that you'd like it to be. Because the truth of the matter is, that's a cyclical thing that will continue to be self-reinforcing. It's self-perpetuating. The more you tell yourself that I will do this, as soon as I get this, as soon as I have that, as soon as I execute it this way, then I'll let it go. I'll release it. I'll let it fly. But the thing is, you're always going to find something that's not quite right about it, something that's imperfect about it. But I want to challenge you this way. Because sometimes imperfections aren't negative things. Imperfections, if we change the words, sometimes the etymology of words and how it gets locked into our brain, from a neurological pathways perspective, like we can't even associate anything else with it. It's like a mental block. So if we change the word imperfections, what they really are beautiful moments of true authenticity and true, genuine personality and character traits. They're authentic. And that's what we're afraid of. Many times we're afraid of being purely authentic and genuine. And it's just because, like Erykah Badu said, and excuse my French for those that it may offend, but she asked the audience for their opinion, and right when she said it, what they thought of the song, she wanted them to listen to the song because it was something close to her heart. And she said, just remember, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. Because that's the truth. And the thing is, and if you guys get a chance, it's actually on her, I think it's on the live, Erykah Badu Live, which is my favorite album of all time. One of the earliest Erykah Badu live albums with the butterfly, where she has the butterfly wings. And it's Baduism Live. There we go. That's where that moment happens. And I love that moment because of the expression. She showed immediately that what she desired to do was to be vulnerable. What she desired to do was to be authentic and genuine and allow something to come out of her that was very special to her, and she knew would be a special gift for others. And at the same time, the comment after, which was, remember, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. That statement was the very real human side that's a little fearful, even though she wanted to push forward through that, and even though she knew that it would touch people and that it was a special gift. So I just want to encourage somebody, that's listening to this, and even encourage myself that, like, you don't have to have things be perfect in order to make progress and in order to be productive. The longer you wait for your situation to be perfect in order for you to execute, the closer you're getting to dying with the music in you. And I just have to say it that directly and in that real way, because sometimes that's what we need to snap us out of this dream idea that we'll do things, we'll execute as soon as all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, everything in life I got this perfect thing in my mind. And when that happens, I'm gone. I'm going, that'll never happen. And even if it does happen, the amount of gift that you could have given the world, no matter what your gift is, whether it's speaking to people, whether it's hugging people, whether it's motivating people, whether it's helping people to get healthy, whether it's playing a song for people or singing to people, whether it's helping someone who is a senior citizen, like whatever it is, the thing is, yes, that ideal time may come around, but if you think about how many expressions you could have put out into the world between the time that you had the inspiration and had the ability to move forward on that and the time when you waited for everything to be ideal, you realize that you still are dying with some of the music in you. And I'm here to help you and myself first not to do that. So be encouraged, people. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for a minute. Drop a line and let me know what you think of this. I hope that it was inspiring to you. Drop a line. You can send a voicemail to this particular podcast by just hitting the voice message button and tell me, how you feel about it. I didn't finish telling you guys the end of that story with the CD. Sorry, I kind of got off track, I basically turned around because although I was 95% allowing myself to be vulnerable and putting out my best then, and I'm glad that I didn't hold back because it was not perfect. That was the reason why at the end I turned around, but I just turned around so that I can go back home, make one more tweak. And if the post office was still open, I would have gone right back and dropped it off at the post office, but it closed, so I had to wait till the next day. So the next day I was at the post office putting my imperfect but yet absolutely perfect CD in the mail in order to be duplicated to touch the world. And even though 7 years later I look at that expression and I know I'm much better, and I know there are a lot of things that I would have done differently, 2020 hindsight, what they say, that 2020 hindsight. The thing is, the amount of people that project and every other thing that I've done in my life has touched people. There's just no excuse not to ever do it. But we do need encouragement on a daily basis to be reminded of that. So this is just a little gentle push. Hope you all have a great one. And thanks so much for tuning in.